Thank you for tuning in to Critical Action Leaders Getting Down to Business. This NC Chamber podcast is coming to you to bring together our business leaders to discuss the racial injustice that is spreading across our state and in our nation. And most importantly, we're coming together so that we can have meaningful dialogue, how the business community can really drive meaningful change that we so badly need. Well, thanks to all our listeners today. My name is John Murphy, and I'm honored to be the host for this series of podcasts, the Critical Action Leaders Getting Down to Business. Today's guests, we're very honored to have them here. Firstly, Trey Rayban, who is the president of AT&T North Carolina, and Tim Humphrey, who is the Chief Data Office VP of IBM. So, gentlemen, you're very welcome, and thank you for joining us. Maybe you could introduce us a little bit about yourselves. Trey, if I can go to you first.
Yeah, thank you, John, for having us. Tim, thank you for taking time to be a part of this conversation. My name is Trey Raven. I am a resident of Raleigh, North Carolina. Have worked for AT&T for 21 years. I've been very fortunate to work for some astounding business leaders who have invested in me, who have taught me the importance of investing in others and being deeply engaged in our communities. And, this conversation that we're going to have today is very relevant, as it relates to the overall, community engagement and creating opportunities for those who may not have had the same opportunities that I have. And so I thank you, John, for putting this series together and for hosting us.
It's a pleasure. Tim, a little bit about you.
Yeah, I'm Tim Humphrey. In addition to being a leader in our Chief Data Office in IBM, I also happen to serve as IBM's Senior North Carolina Executive. And I have the privilege of leading our RTP site, which happens to be our second largest global site for IBM. Like Trey said, I'm too a resident of Raleigh. I'm a North Carolina native. I grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and went to North Carolina State to study engineering. And when I came up here to Raleigh, I never left. And I echo Trey's sentiments. I think that this is such a powerful time with everything that's gone on this year, from the pandemic to the racial injustice. I think that, if we can rally, I think we'll look back on 2020 as a major pivot point for not only business, but for society. And, I'm very pleased to be here with you, John and Trey, and have this discussion. I think it's important that business leaders tackle issues that society face head on. So looking forward to the discussion.
That's great. I was just talking to somebody earlier on or late last week, and I said that the last time I spoke to them was February of this year. And we were both just commenting, but by God, how the world has changed since that conversation in February and how you could not have predicted. But just kind of digging into the specific issue that we're talking about today in terms of the recent deaths of Black men and women at the hands of law enforcement. I mean, in your organizations, both your organizations are massive organizations. And what are some of the conversations you are having or you feel compelled to have around these events? Tim, maybe I come to you first.
Yeah, it is such a tragedy, and as an employer, our first priority is always on ensuring our employees feel safe and comfortable bringing their whole authentic selves to work. So I have communicated to all employees right on the heels of some of these tragedies. I communicated to all our employees in North Carolina, as well as having several dedicated, safe discussions to hear what's on the hearts and minds of all of our Black constituency. And I feel that this is an opportunity to take more aggressive actions around diversity and inclusion. And I've been doing just that inside the company at the senior executive level with all of my peers across the globe. In addition to that, companies are part of the community. So we want to make sure that we offer our support locally We've been doing such with the city of Durham, city of Raleigh, state of North Carolina, the local chambers, and various other elected officials. And again, we've been doing storytelling that probably in the past people suppress, but it's important to give that perspective to others so they can see how these issues affect their peers and the people they call friends.
Yeah, absolutely. And Trey, for you and your organization, what's the conversations you're having with your people? What are they saying to you?
Well, these conversations aren't new to us. We've been engaged in dialogue with our employees and with the broader business community and external stakeholders for decades. We were one of the first companies to endorse the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s. We've been deeply engaged with civil rights organizations, both in terms of our financial support, but as well as human capital and employee engagement. And about 4 years ago, our CEO started a series of conversations with our employees following some unfortunate events in Dallas, Texas, where we're headquartered. And those led to very intentional, very transparent conversations with our employee base at large. And one of the things that we found is that it's one thing to talk to someone, it's another to actually actively listen. We've all got a story. We've all, got a framing point of reference that really influences our perspective in life. And when you take time to listen to someone, listen to the challenges that they have and their perspective, you can then begin building bridges of understanding so that you can find ways to move forward in an equitable way. A couple of AT&T's core values are stand for equality and embrace freedom. And we want our employees to be able to embrace the freedom of conversation and dialogue and know that as a company, we support them, support their core beliefs, and we want to create opportunities so that everyone has a chance for success in life, both within our company as well as within our communities and our customer base.
I think what you're saying about listening is just so important because I think it is the really, really listening to it. I was introduced to a book there quite recently when this whole thing came up. Called White Fragility, which has been mentioned many, many times. And I certainly found because I listened to it on Audible, but I found by listening to that, it makes you realize that your own knowledge of the subject is actually quite surface deep. And it really is the responsibility to actively listen and learn. And sorry, Tim, I cut across you there. You're going to say something.
Yeah, look, I think I just wanted to chime in on this listening point. I think it's powerful. I think people underestimate how powerful it can be to actually listen. I went to one of my peers' executive leadership team meeting, and I shared with that group a story about a run-in that I had with the police while I was just going about doing my law-abiding citizens type things in the community, and it was very upsetting. And I've got several stories of this. And the people that were there, they listened to this story. They could see the hurt, they could feel the hurt, and they actually developed a ton of empathy and a ton of perspective. Because one of the things that being a Black male in corporate America, you tend to suppress a lot of these stories. You don't tend to share these things that happen out in the world. And now you have the opportunity to share it, and it's a huge emotional burden, but it also helps people relate, and it helps people get perspectives. And when people start getting perspectives and connect on a deeper human level, I think that's really how the society can come together as a whole. So the point Trey mentioned around listening is just so important. A lot of people think that, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to act. They don't know what actions they should take. But I tell you, if you listen, it will guide you to the actions you will take. It will also potentially change some perspectives that you may have. Or if you don't have perspectives, it will give you some good perspectives.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful. One question that actually, when you talk about that, Tim, you talk about being on the receiving end of that from a personal perspective, which is horrific. I mean, truthfully, I cannot imagine it because it doesn't happen to me in that sense. But I mean, okay, you're in a position, you're successful, you're well educated, all of that. But for young kids, I'm thinking of kind of teenage kids, when they're on the receiving end of that, how do you then, or how do you help them process that without them becoming embittered, angered, and all frustrated, and all of the things that just are not healthy?
That's I think that's a huge challenge, right? Look, it's hard for young people to process this. It's really hard for anybody to process this. Some of the experiences I've had were from being young all the way to being an adult, and everything is very personal. And when you experience racism or some police injustice, it's like a trauma. So you do go through these emotional cycles, just like you would any other trauma. But ultimately, it sort of depends on your background, your experiences, as to how you will ultimately come through it. And yeah, you can end up on I'll call it on the wrong side, where you build up hatred in your heart because you're hurt and you're upset. But I think, there's the one thing I think that really can combat that feeling of hatred is when you start to see and personally experience examples of love, examples where people are treating you in an equitable fashion. I think those examples start to overcome some of those harsh feelings that you can develop. So I encourage everybody to make sure you are an advocate for equality. If you do that, I think when hopefully these incidents that young people will have to face start to become fewer and fewer, I'm cautiously optimistic about that. And then, when they do, if you have these examples where, people have reached out, people have shown love, and people have gone beyond just looking at people's skin colors, then you'll be able to heal from these moments. But they do leave a permanent scar. I tell you, I can recount every single moment where I've been treated with bias, where I've had run-ins with the police. I can recount them vividly, and it's almost like when I tell the stories, it's almost like they're happening to me again. So, you just hopefully can work through it. Hopefully you've got people that love you around you.
I can only just imagine. When I look at the two organizations that you guys represent, I mean, you're talking about AT&T and IBM, two massive organizations with, I don't know, hundreds, 500,000-600,000, employees between both your organizations. And you look at your position within the community. How do you feel that your organizations and your institutions are kind of uniquely positioned to really help combat that kind of racism? Trey, maybe can I go to you first on that?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, businesses and business leaders need to acknowledge that we have a role to play in this issue. We owe it to our employees, we owe it to our customers, we owe it to the communities that we serve to be deeply engaged. It's trying to create opportunities of equity for everyone. Our society only works when everyone has an equal opportunity for success. Some may have backgrounds that are disadvantaged. I came from a background where I was a bit disadvantaged. And I was very fortunate, as I said earlier, to have people who have invested in me, who have nurtured me, who have mentored me throughout my career. And we as organizations, we as companies owe that to our employees. Our CEO, John Stankley has been very actively engaged in this issue for quite some time, and he has committed AT&T's resources to issue of racial justice, and he's committed on for as long as it takes. Our chairman and former CEO, Randall Stevenson, that has penned an open letter that appeared in many national periodicals a couple of months ago, calling for congressional action, calling for states and local governments to engage in the issue of racial justice, to ensure that situations like Tim mentioned and experienced don't happen again. Those leave deep wounds in our society. And, as a white male living in the South, I've never experienced what Tim has experienced. But what I have experienced is the love that he mentioned, the compassion that he mentioned. My biggest champion within AT&T was Vanessa Harrison. Vanessa is an African-American business leader who grew up in Southeast Raleigh in a very disadvantaged background and rose from the position of operator in AT&T to state president, now regional president of AT&T. And she poured into me. She invested into me, and really gave me a platform to succeed. And I think that we as a business have a responsibility to do that, for young people. Young people are looking for authenticity. They're looking for genuine compassion. Do our actions, match our words? As a business leader, I can say something in a public venue, but if I don't follow that up with actions, if I don't pour it into our communities, then I've essentially done nothing. And we owe it as a society to invest, in the people who live in our communities.
Okay. And for you, Tim, what's your organization doing? What's IBM doing?
Yeah, we're doing a lot. I want to pause for a minute. Trey's story about its mentor is very similar to mine. Actually, my predecessor that used to lead IBM North Carolina, I actually followed in her footsteps. She was a white lady, and she mentored me. She coached me from a very early point in my career. And, that is another great example of that love that I mentioned, right? She took an interest in me and taught me a lot. And those types of things go a long way. And I know I wouldn't be sitting here where I'm at today without her. But just to go back to your question, I think businesses, we sort of have a priority to make sure our workforce matches the demographics of the regions in which we do business. Again, got to create an environment where people feel comfortable bringing their whole selves to work. And that means a lot of things. It means training for employees and managers on recognizing and addressing both conscious and unconscious bias, having a zero tolerance policy for any type of discrimination. And Trey spoke about this too. We have to ensure we create opportunities in our hiring practices from our recruiters, our interviewers, our hiring managers. Really focus on creating a diverse and equitable workforce. Ultimately, companies, we just have a responsibility to give back to the communities in which we operate in. Our nonprofit organizations are sort of at the core of these communities, and supporting them is really a key to helping make a better society. And in terms of what some of the things we're doing around race relations is, I'm very proud. Our CEO penned a similar letter that Trey described. Additionally, we've ceased development of all of our general purpose facial recognition and analysis software. We've advocated for hate crime laws in the 4 states that did not have these protections, and that won't be the case. It won't be going forward. We've had all of our employees have participated in open dialogues and taking ally pledges. We've committed to some longer term systemic actions. One example of this is an initiative that I'm currently leading across the corporations to remove all culturally offensive terms in our technology products and documentation. Words like master and slave when you're referring to storage devices. And then, we've made a commitment to work at all levels, local, state, federal, to implement police reform and partner on any technology-based solutions. We want to, like Trey said, we've got to be part of the solution here.
Mm-hmm. One thing that struck me just when you're talking about it, that because we've had the kind of drive for greater inclusivity for quite a long period of time, and let's be honest, it hasn't had the greatest amount of traction, and that's globally. But how do you develop that without it becoming kind of tokenism, and that we end up with kind of quotas, which is kind of seen as tokenism rather than it being real? Trey, do you want to maybe kick off on that one?
Oh, sure. So that's a deep question, and I think that gets to the roots of us as a society, and having compassion for our neighbors, and the deeply held beliefs that we have as a society, and creating freedom. So number one, we can express those beliefs in a very safe, open, and transparent manner. That's equality. And everything that we say, everything that we do, should focus on equality. And diversity and inclusion are part of that drive. They're key components. And I do go back, to the point I made earlier about stopping and listening, and allowing folks to tell their stories so that we can develop deeper bridges of understanding. Because through understanding, comes change. And the point that our society is at today, I do firmly believe is a pivot point. The struggle has gone on for too long. Young people recognize that there are systemic biases that people groups within our culture have to overcome, and those biases aren't right. We've got to do everything that we can as businesses, as individuals, as leaders in our communities to remove those inherent biases. AT&T is doing several things to focus on that. One, we are focused on systemic racism and working with law enforcement, working with business leaders in communities, working with federal, state, and local elected leaders to create opportunities for everyone to remove those systemic biases. Our Warner Media unit is telling stories of racism. They're using that content platform that they have to give people who have experienced the things that Tim's experienced, an opportunity and a platform to tell their stories so that people like me who have never experienced that can have a deeper level of awareness and understand our role in removing the systemic biases. But the key does come back to listening to one another and taking time to understand the challenges that we face as a society.
And Tim, I mean, diversity and inclusivity, obviously there's a lot of work going on in your organization. How is it being led in your organization? Because, previously in many organizations, to be honest, in many organizations, there was a bit of a box ticking exercise to it, but it's now certainly become kind of front and center. So how is it being driven through your organization?
Well, I think one, we have to realize that it's about opportunity. I believe that you're not checking a box. It's not tokenism. It's really about opportunity. And if I'm a data guy. If you study the data, it will show you that there's not opportunity that's equal for everybody. And that's really what it's about. It's not about lowering standards. It's not about giving something. It's about creating a place where everybody can compete and with a fair and equitable baseline. So I believe that talent is talent. It's independent of your skin color. So we need to assess people based on their talent, their skills, their experience. If you do that, then I think you get to this point of it's an equal opportunity for everybody. And ultimately, look, we're probably like AT&T with Trey. We're a very large organization. And we have a D&I team as part of our HR organization that does a lot of great work. We have lots of diversity networking groups. We call ours business resource groups that are employee-driven groups around all various diversity dimensions, from Black to women to people with disabilities. And they do a good job of ensuring that our company stays true to its values and its commitments around diversity. But I just have this belief that ultimately diversity and inclusion, it can't be something that a group does or an organization does. It just has to be woven into the fabric of the culture of your company. You have to want to have an inclusive company where, again, everybody feels comfortable showing up to work as their full authentic self, and you give people equal opportunities. And that just starts with the old saying of, culture is an output. So you just got to have a zero tolerance policy for people that go against your values in your company. When you do that, then we can get to this point where we do really have a diverse and inclusive workforce across companies like Trey's with AT&T, IBM, and other companies across the globe. But it has to be part of the company's culture, and culture is an output. So you just have to have a zero tolerance for these activities that go on inside of companies that go against your values.
Okay, Trey, for you, how's D&I being driven through AT&T?
Well, as Tim said, it does come back to culture. Yeah, everything that you do as a company is filtered through your culture. And if you have the right culture, you have an inclusive culture where, everyone is rowing the boat in the same direction. Everyone is focused on equality. At that point, you're not checking a box. You're not in danger of falling into a system where you're focused on quotas. Yeah, it's who you are. It's a part of your DNA. And I'm proud at AT&T that that's a key part of our culture. That has been for the last 40 years. And so I can tell you, as a young person out of college who came to work for one of AT&T's predecessor companies, I recognized very quickly diversity and inclusion were a key tenet, key value of our company. And as Tim said, there is zero tolerance for any type of engagement that doesn't align with that. And you don't have to rely on our leadership team to drive that. That's driven by our employee base at large, from our frontline technicians through our frontline managers, all the way up to our chief diversity officer, who, like Tim mentioned in his organization, reports to our head of HR, who reports to the CEO. So we have that focus at the top of our organization, but it does come down to our managers and our frontline technicians who are a part of that culture of awareness, that culture of understanding, and that drive for equality, so that everyone has an equal opportunity for success and growth in our company. And that translates into our communities and to our customer base at large. Tim touched on something that's very important. Our employee base needs to reflect the communities in which we serve. When you look at our employee base, it should look like those communities that we serve. We shouldn't be homogenous. We shouldn't have a single train of thought or think that this way is the appropriate way to do it. The diversity of ideas, the diversity of thought and engagement are a key tenet of who we are.
Okay. And question to both of you. I mean, this has come onto the agenda. It's very much at the forefront of people's minds. Have you a fear that this won't stick and that something else will come along and grab the headlines and it gets pushed aside and it'll just fizzle out and it'll be something that we will vaguely remember, that happened in 2020? But, oh yeah, what happened to that?
I'll tell you, I do have that fear. Um, it is, I do believe that in today's society, we have a very short attention span. So I share that fear. But I will say that I'd characterize it as cautious optimism. I am, when I look at it, if I rewound back in time, I'm sitting here having an open dialogue with the leader of AT&T, and we are talking for this hour all about diversity and inclusion. I think that's a sign of progress, and I think there's a long way to go. But Trey and I are sitting here having this discussion with you about how to make it better and what our companies need to do and what all companies need to do. So I think that's a sign of progress. You see a lot of things on the news and everything is negative, but you also see lots of great examples of people coming together, people of all colors coming together to, stand for equality. And, I'm just hopeful that the strength of our society, the desire to be inclusive and loving, would just triumph over parts of our society that, holds on to racism, hatred, and being separate. I just think about that, quote from Dr. King, where he said that hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. And, we're seeing a lot of examples of love. And, hopefully we can overcome our short attention span and make this systemic, right? Make this effort to drive out racism that has been systemic in our past. If we can continue down this journey, there will be one-off incidents. People do teach hatred. It's not something that's natural, but hopefully they will lessen over time. And again, I'm cautiously optimistic. Just the fact that I'm sitting here with both of you having this discussion, is one indicator that maybe we're on a path to getting to a more loving society.
Absolutely. And Trey, do you share that concern that it gets knocked off the front pages and knocked off our agenda?
Yeah, I am cautiously optimistic. I think as a country, we're in a very unique point in time. Our politics are as divided as they've ever been, and that's a reflection of some of the challenges that we're seeing globally, and some of the tendencies that we're seeing globally. But I believe that love will conquer all. As Tim highlighted with Dr. King, light does overcome the darkness, and there are opportunities for us as a society. It does take bold leadership, and I'm proud of the work that AT&T is doing. I'm proud of the work that Tim and our colleagues at IBM are doing. And we're calling, AT&T is calling for real change, not incremental change. Not change that's essentially window dressing, but real quantifiable change in our systems and our processes. To eliminate racial injustice, to create equitable opportunities for people to succeed in education and economic opportunities. To create equity in healthcare. If we do that, if we address those core tenets of our systems and the challenges that folks have to overcome in our society, I do believe we're going to see real change. And I believe that now is the moment of time to do so. I'm confident that our society is committed to doing the heavy lifting that it's going to take to ensure equality and justice for all.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I share your optimism. I must say, and certainly I passionately hope that it does stay on the agenda and kind of center to all of the work that we're doing, because it is so critical. I think it's interesting to listen to the two of you as kind of very senior leaders, and the way you talked about the impact that your mentors had on both of you, both professionally and personally. And I think that does highlight what our roles are as leaders in the community and the impact that we can have. So to Trey and to Tim, thank you so much for joining me on this conversation. I know it's not an easy one, but I really want to thank you. I think you've been very straight, very open, very honest, and very brave. And I think the community is good hands with the two of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate the time. Thanks, Trey. You gave, I think you gave everybody a lot of good things to think about. And thanks, John, for facilitating a great discussion.
My pleasure.
Yeah, John, thank you, Tim, for the conversation. I do look forward to grabbing a cup of coffee. Yeah, once we're at a normal state of affairs. And John, thank you for your leadership in putting together these conversations.
My pleasure.
All right, consider it a deal, Trey.
Sounds good.